Well, we're diving into a real-life story from the 1950s Spain
Wow.
that's even more intense.
Okay.
It's the story of Marcos Rodriguez. This boy lived in the wild for 12 years.
12 years.
Yeah.
Wow. What makes this deep dive so fascinating is that we're not just going to be looking at survival, like just the basics of how did he stay alive.
Right.
We're going to look at how adaptable humans are.
Yeah.
What does it really mean to be human? And have we underestimated the potential for connection between humans and other species?
Right. And for this deep dive, we've got sources that cover Marcos's entire life.
Okay.
From his really rough childhood to his eventual return back to, quote unquote, normal society.
Right.
So let's unpack this. Marcos's early life, it was tough.
Yeah.
His family was super poor and his dad worked in the mountains. He was a goat herd. And when Marcos turned 7, he was basically just handed off to this elderly shepherd to live that same isolated life in the mountains with the goats.
So imagine like you're 7 years old
Yeah.
and you're suddenly thrust into this harsh, lonely existence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you imagine?
No.
And then, to make matters worse, the shepherd dies,
Oh, no.
leaving Marcos completely alone in the mountains.
7 years old.
7 years old, no survival skills.
Hmm.
He doesn't have any tools, no one to rely on.
Right.
I mean, most kids would just completely fall apart.
Right.
But Marcos did something incredible.
He did. He did something incredible. He survived.
Yeah.
And not just survived, the 7-year-old, he thrived.
Yeah.
He thrived by adapting to his surroundings. So he started eating what the animals ate. He
Yeah.
started moving like they moved.
Wow.
It's not like he had, Bear Grylls out there teaching him survival skills,
Yeah.
He had to figure it all out on his own.
And that's really where the concept of human adaptability, I think, really shines through.
Yeah.
You think about the potential nutritional and developmental consequences for a child living on a raw food diet for years.
Yeah.
Like, what does that do to their physical growth,
Right.
immune system? What about their brain development?
Right.
I mean, it raises these fascinating questions about human resilience.
Right.
Like, how much can we really take?
Right. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
It is absolutely mind-boggling to think about. But then it gets even wilder
Okay.
because it wasn't just about mimicking the animals.
Right.
Marcos actually started to bond with them.
And it's the wolves, right?
Yeah.
The bond that really grabs everybody's attention is the wolf pack.
Yeah.
The reports suggest that they accepted Marcos, they shared food with him, played with him, and essentially they became his surrogate family.
Wait, hold on. A whole pack of wolves just adopts a human kid?
Yeah.
It sounds like something out of, a fantasy novel or something.
Right.
Like, what do we actually know about how a lone child could navigate the social structure of a wolf pack? Didn't he pose a threat to them? Disrupt their whole thing?
It's a really good question. Wolf packs, I mean, they were incredibly hierarchical.
Right.
There's like a dominant pair at the top,
Right.
and then all these rankings within the pack, and each wolf has a role to play.
Yeah.
We can speculate, maybe, that the wolves saw Marcos as kind of this vulnerable creature, not a threat.
Right.
And maybe his presence didn't really disrupt their existing social order, too much.
Wow. That's amazing. But this wasn't just like a short visit with the pack. This wasn't just like, oh, we hung out with wolves for a week.
No.
This was 12 years. Marcos lived with these wolves for 12 years of his life.
It's incredible.
He was basically living as one of them. He was howling. He was scavenging for food.
Yeah.
He was navigating all the dangers of living in the wild.
12 years. I mean, that is a huge chunk of a person's development.
Yeah.
Especially those crucial childhood years.
Right.
And, it wasn't just about him staying alive. It was about adapting to a completely different way of life.
Right.
A different way of perceiving the world.
Right.
Like, how different was his thinking?
Yeah.
After being with the wolves for so long, it really makes you wonder, like, how did Marcos's brain actually adapt to this extreme lifestyle?
Right.
Like, he ate a raw food diet,
Yeah.
likely whatever the wolves scavenged.
Yeah.
Did that impact his growth?
Right. Because this isn't, a cute little Disney movie.
No.
This is a kid facing real dangers,
Yeah,
real hunger.
absolutely.
Did the sources mention any long-term health effects from those 12 years?
Yeah, there's definitely evidence that his growth was stunted.
Okay.
When they found Marcos, he was much smaller
Right.
than you would expect for like a teenager.
Right.
It's possible that the lack of certain nutrients in a raw food diet, especially during like crucial growth periods, really had a lasting impact.
Yeah. Makes you appreciate how resilient kids are. Even under those conditions.
It's incredible.
Okay, but after 12 years living with wolves, Marcos's life took another drastic turn.
Yeah.
He was found by police
Oh, wow.
and brought back into human society.
Imagine going from complete freedom in the wild
Right,
to the confines of civilization after 12 years.
right,
It's hard to comprehend the psychological and social whiplash he must have experienced.
right. And there are stories of, so-called feral children
Right.
throughout history, kids who've been isolated from human contact.
Yes.
Some researchers say that kind of early deprivation can cause irreversible damage.
Right.
Did Marcos's case support or challenge that view?
That's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Marcos's case, like other cases of feral children, it pushes us to examine the boundaries of human experience.
Right.
While some feral children really struggle to integrate, Marcos, while he did face huge challenges,
Right.
did show an ability to adapt, even relearn language. It really makes you think about the plasticity of the human brain, especially in childhood.
So he didn't just come bounding out of the woods, fluent in Spanish.
Not quite, no.
No.
He'd essentially forgotten human language.
Wow.
Reports say he mainly growled and howled.
Oh, wow.
He had to relearn everything. How to dress, eat with utensils, interact with people,
Right.
things we take for granted.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how disorienting that must have been.
Yeah.
Did the sources offer any insight into what that reintegration process was like for him? Emotionally? Did he long for the wolves? Did he resent being rescued?
There are anecdotes that suggest he missed the freedom and simplicity of life in the wild.
Okay.
It's fascinating to consider. Did he see humans as his own kind
Right.
after all that time?
Yeah.
Or were the wolves his true family?
It really highlights the complexity of this story.
Yeah.
It's not just about surviving in the wilderness. It's about identity,
Right.
belonging, what it means to be human. And it makes you wonder, what are the essential elements for human connection? Is it shared language?
Yeah.
Shared culture?
Or something deeper.
Yeah.
Right.
We've talked a lot about Marcos's physical and social adaptation,
Right.
but there's one aspect we keep kind of dancing around.
Okay.
The idea that he was actually communicating with these animals, especially the wolves.
Right.
I mean, that's the part that really captures people's imagination.
Right.
Was he actually, talking to them?
Now that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It challenges everything we think we know about language, intelligence, and the boundaries between species.
Right. It'd be easy to just dismiss it as, just a tall tale.
Yeah.
But there's this whole field of research dedicated to animal communication.
Right.
What do we actually know about how animals talk to each other?
Well, it's far more complex than just barking or chirping.
Right.
Animals use a variety of methods.
Right.
Songs, chemical signals,
Mm.
body language. And recent research even suggests some animals might have a basic grasp of grammar and syntax.
Whoa, hold on.
Yeah.
Are you saying animals could have languages that we just haven't figured out yet?
Yeah, the possibility.
Like dolphins having, philosophical debates under the sea?
It could be. There have been fascinating studies with dolphins and parrots
Okay.
that show they can understand complex commands.
Right.
They can even use symbols to communicate.
Right.
So, while we may never know the exact nature of Marcos's interactions with the wolves,
Yeah.
we can't rule out some form of complex communication.
That's incredible. So even if he wasn't fluent in, wolf,
Right.
they could have developed a shared understanding through years of living together.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's important to remember that communication isn't always about words.
Right.
Think about how much we convey through body language, tone of voice, facial expressions.
Right.
Animals do the same thing, and sometimes even more effectively than humans.
This is blowing my mind. So was Marcos having full-blown conversations with those wolves?
Right.
Or was it something more intuitive, like a shared understanding built on experience?
It's hard to say. We may never know for sure.
Right.
But what we can say is that Marcos clearly adapted to the wolves' way of life.
Yeah.
And they accepted him into their social structure.
Right.
That suggests a level of communication and understanding that goes far beyond simple cohabitation.
This is way more complex than I ever imagined.
Yeah.
We've talked about his survival, reintegration, even the possibility of animal language.
Right.
But there's another layer here, a
Okay.
question that keeps coming back to me.
Yeah.
If a kid can adapt to life with wolves, what does that say about our assumptions of what's natural for humans?
That's a profound question.
Yeah.
And I think it's at the heart of what makes Marcos's story so compelling.
Right.
It forces us to examine our own relationship with nature,
Right.
with the animal world. Have we built up too much separation? Lost some essential connection?
It's like Marcos stepped outside the boundaries of what we consider normal human experience.
Right.
And found a different way to connect, to belong.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what else is possible.
Exactly. And it highlights the incredible adaptability of children,
Right.
their capacity to learn and grow in even the most unusual circumstances.
This is all so much to unpack. I
Yeah.
feel like we've barely scratched the surface
Right?
of what Marcos's story can teach us
Yeah.
about human resilience, the blurred lines between us and the animal kingdom.
And we haven't even touched upon the ethical considerations
Right.
of his rediscovery and reintegration into society.
Right.
Was it truly the best outcome for him,
Right.
considering the life he'd known?
That's a whole other deep dive
Nice.
waiting to happen.
Yeah.
But for now, let's take a moment to absorb everything we've discussed.
Yes.
Listeners, we'll be back after a short break to delve deeper into the mysteries of animal communication
Right.
and what Marcos's experience might tell us about the limits of human potential. Okay, so we're back, and I don't know about you, but I'm still kind of reeling from all this talk about wolf packs and maybe animals having languages.
It's amazing.
It's like we've opened this, the secret door into a whole other world.
I know. What's fascinating is that Marcos's story, while it is extreme,
Right.
it forces us to look closer at something we take for granted every day.
Yeah.
Communication.
Yeah.
What does it actually mean to communicate? Does it require words?
Right.
Complex grammar?
Right, because we've been taught that, human language is like this peak of evolution.
Right.
But, if animals can convey complex ideas without it, maybe we've been a little too, self-congratulatory.
A little too proud.
Yeah, a little too proud,
Yeah. Think about a dog,
Right,
okay? They can't form sentences,
right.
but they can definitely communicate their needs,
Oh,
their
yeah.
emotions, their intentions,
Right.
a wagging tail,
Right,
a playful bow, a warning growl.
right.
These are all forms of communication,
Yeah.
just as valid as any human word.
And if dogs can do it,
Right.
imagine the possibilities with, even more complex animals like primates
Right.
or whales, crows.
Yeah.
Some researchers think that, certain bird species
Yeah.
have incredibly intricate,
Social structures.
social structures and ways of sharing information.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Crows, for instance, have been shown to recognize individual human faces
What?
and even hold grudges.
Oh, wow.
They can use tools, solve problems, and they even seem to mourn their dead.
Really?
That level of social
Oh,
intelligence
wow.
really suggests a complex communication system that we're only beginning to understand.
So maybe Marco's experience with the wolves, wasn't as crazy as
Yeah.
it seems.
Says out there.
Yeah, as out there, you
Yeah.
know. Maybe he tapped into some kind of innate human ability
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
connect.
And communicate.
Yeah, communicate beyond words.
It's an intriguing possibility.
Right.
And it raises the question, have we, as humans, in our modern world,
Yeah.
become so reliant on verbal language
Right.
that we've lost some of our intuitive ability to communicate non-verbally?
It's like we've traded instinct for intellect.
Yeah.
We've gotten so good at talking
Right.
that we've forgotten how to listen,
Exactly.
and not just listen with our ears, but listen with our whole being.
I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
And perhaps by studying animal communication,
Right.
by looking at cases like Marcos's,
Yeah.
we can start to rediscover that lost connection,
Yeah.
that ability to understand and be understood
Yeah.
beyond the limits of words.
This whole conversation has been incredible.
It
It's been a real journey.
Yeah.
We've explored survival, adaptation, the potential for animal languages, and even, question what it means to be human.
It's a lot to process.
It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process.
Right.
And I think the most important takeaway from Marcos's story is this. We still have so much to learn
I agree.
about the natural world,
Yeah.
about ourselves,
I'm sold.
about the potential for connection that exists between all living things.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
So listeners, if you've been, as captivated as we have
Right.
by this deep dive into Marcos Rodriguez's life,
Yeah.
keep exploring.
Yeah. Read more about feral children.
Yeah.
Delve into the research on animal communication.
Yeah, go out and just like observe the animals
Yes.
in your own life.
In your own backyard.
Yeah, with a fresh perspective.
Yeah.
You might be surprised by what you discover.
You really might.
And who knows, maybe you'll even start to hear the whispers of a language you never knew existed.
I love that. That's a great way to end it.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.